I'll now call back to order the regular meeting of the Lake Forest School District 67 Board of Education for August 20th, 2019. May I have a roll call? Eileen, please.
Mr. Folker?
Here.
Mrs. Sands?
Here.
Mr. Burkowski?
Here.
Dr. Lemke?
Here.
Mr. Chun?
Here.
Mrs. Levert and Mr. England sent their apologies. They cannot join us this evening, but we have a quorum.
Thank you, Eileen. On behalf of the District 67 Board of Education, I'd like to welcome everyone back to a new school year. My favorite day of the year remains Christmas morning. Even now at my age, I still find coming downstairs to a room full of gifts to be magical. Everyone is excited and curious to see what surprises might be under the tree, and the positive energy is palpable. Opening day of the baseball season and the first day of school are also very high on my list of favorite days. Opening day and first day of school share a lot in common, in my opinion. In both cases, optimism is at an all-time high in these days. The slate is wiped clean and the possibilities are endless. On opening day of the baseball season, the White Sox still have a chance to win the World Series, and on the first day of school, a nervous new student is hopeful that she might find a new best friend, while another student is excited to play on the basketball team. Still others are excited to see what books they get to read, others finally get a chance to play in the STEM lab, and still others are looking forward to getting their own Chromebook. There's an excitement in the air, and on day one, it is, for the most part, positive energy. This year, as we open our doors at Cherokee, Everett, Sheridan, and Deer Path, we welcome 1,676 students to our school district. Of those, we're especially pleased to welcome 253 new students, with 8 other families still in the process of registering. We also welcome 299 fantastic staff members, including 11 new certified teachers, 1 new principal, and 8 other new staff members. We're both pleased and proud to call every single one of these students and staff part of the District 67 community. What is not new this year is the District 67 mission and vision. 5 years ago, the board approved a new mission and vision statement for the district, along with a set of core values and 6 related milestones. The mission and vision remain the guiding light behind many of our decisions, and the milestones help keep us on track. Achieving that vision remains a main way that I personally define success for our school district, and I continue to encourage this board and our management team to remain focused on that. We will review the mission statement and the associated milestones of success at an upcoming board meeting, including progress we have made and new initiatives we are undertaking relating to it. For tonight, I encourage all members of our community who may not be familiar with the mission statement to check it out on our website at lakeforestschools.org. As you review it, it should quickly become evident what we value most and where we want to go as a school district. If you have any questions, any member of this board or staff is available to provide more details. Welcome again to a new and exciting school year. I hope everyone has an outstanding year. That concludes the President's report. We now move on to the Superintendent's report. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Burkowski. I really appreciate your sentiments about the first day of school. There is an incredible sense of renewal, and in this room, this past week, we had the shared administrative teams of 67 and 115 that met for the Admin Advance, as it's called. We focused on security and best practices and changing laws and expectations for vaping and marijuana, receiving a briefing from our district's attorney on a variety of legal issues, and also discussing professional development experiences from a site visit to another district to see their application of inclusive practices for all students. And finally, we envision changes for each district in the next 3 to 5 years. And the start of school is always an exciting time for every one of our administrators, just like it is for our kids. And again, in this room today, we conducted a half-day session with all of the new staff in the district, and they got a tour of the community in the pelting rain, unfortunately. We welcomed them and oriented them to their new work. I'd like to thank Rebecca Jenkins and her team for all of their hard work on that. This is one of the things that Rebecca has really worked hard on and really embraced in each of the districts, making sure that all of our staff get a quality orientation. We've also had another busy summer with a great deal of professional development. It's been ongoing. CHAMPS training, which is social emotional work based on the Safe Schools research, took place seemingly every single week all summer long with different groups. We've also done a great deal of construction again this summer. We had a wide range of ADA work that will change and improve the appearance of our buildings. That means many new doors, door hardware, and ramps across the district. Cherokee had a special project to address humidity issues in the building, And that work is ongoing with testing occurring and tweaks that will last probably until the weather turns cold and maybe beyond that. So that completes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Questions from the board for the superintendent? Seeing none, we move to our first public participation. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Seeing none, we move on to reports from the admin. I see none. You agree? Right. Fantastic. We now move on to board committees. First up, Board of Ed, chaired by Suzanne.
The Education Committee will hold its first meeting of the school year at noon on Thursday, October 3rd in Seminar A at West Campus. The committee is excited to have community members Julie Egleet and Umang Singh returning to the committee and a new community member, Amy Wells, joining us this year. The dates and times for these meetings are posted on the District 67 website, and agendas will be available prior to each meeting once they are set.
Thanks, Suzanne. Questions or comments for the Ed Committee? Seeing none, we move on to the Board Finance and Ops, chaired by Rob.
Finance and Ops have not met. We will meet on October 15th.
Questions for the Finance and Ops? Seeing none, we move on to the Policy Committee, chaired by Jeff.
The Policy Committee met last week on the 13th in joint session with District 115. We reviewed Press Issue 101, which we will be looking at this evening as a first reading, so I don't need to go into any more further detail on that. We'll talk about it in a little bit.
Any questions we'll save for later? Compensation Committee, Jeff.
Okay, the Compensation Committee has met twice since our last meeting. We met on Monday, June 15th and Monday, July 15th and Thursday, August 15th. Both meetings were held here at the West Campus. I'll quickly just give you a quick overview of each of the meetings and what we discussed. The July meeting was focused on developing our committee charter, identifying data requirements for the project, and establishing a work plan for delivering a district compensation philosophy recommendation that encompasses both shared service and District 67 specific employees to the board by March of 2020. We've chosen that date as that is the next opportunity to have compensation discussions, and we would like to have that philosophy in place prior to that. The key outcomes of our July meeting were as follows. The committee agreed to meet at least monthly between July and March, and we established meeting dates. We agreed to an outline of a draft for the charter, which we'll be voting on this evening. And in trying to figure out the work process needed to understand role-specific requirements, salary bands, processes that were managed, et cetera, the committee decided to do a deep dive on 3 specific shared service roles. And those roles chosen were superintendent, director of business services, and payroll administrator. We chose these as an opportunity to test drive kind of the process for figuring out and developing a philosophy instead of trying to look at all the roles at once and creating a bit of a mess. So we decided to choose those 3 roles, not only to ease or to create kind of, like I said, a test drive, but also because those 3 roles are replicable in other districts, not just, so there's a superintendent in every district, there's a director of business services and payroll and so forth. So that's why we chose those 3. At the August meeting, which we had last week, the committee agreed to the draft committee charter, like I said, which we'll be voting on shortly. The committee then spent the rest of the meeting overviewing the 3 shared service roles and discussing how to compare them with peer single district positions. The initial thinking is to come up with what I would call a unique multiplier for each shared service role that is based on how much more work may be required in that position versus a similar peer district position. This multiplier would then be added to the role's base salary or some form of compensation to come up with a recommended compensation for that role. It's similar to the old stipend that we used to use, but instead of being a dollar value, it's a percentage value, and therefore kind of avoids that question we used to have around, does the stipend get a percentage increase when raises come or not? This would suggest it's all based off of a percentage. So look at it this way. If you've got a director of business services that is handling multiple districts, and we were to compare that individual's role, not the individual, but that individual's role, with a variety of single district peers, how much more processes are managed, how much more work is included as a result, trying to come up with a percentage increase, and then applying that to base compensation. At the same time, we would be working on developing what we believe is the appropriate salary bands for that position, and then you would apply the percentage to what the salaries are within that band. So we are scheduled to meet again in September, on September 16th, and we'll be doing so every month. We also agreed that there may be a need for additional meetings and additional subcommittee type work to keep this being pushed forward. I would like to point out a few concerns that I have relative to this work that I think need to be shared to the board as a whole. As you all know, I'm big on doing the right things right, and I have a few concerns that may, I don't want to say prevent us from doing that, but are certainly going to be hurdles. First and foremost, and this is somewhat driven by my own personal feelings, and I apologize for that, but I sometimes wonder if we're focusing on the symptoms versus the actual cause. By that I mean talking about and coming up with a philosophy, a compensation philosophy for shared service, I think misses the whole concept of whether or not we should have shared service to begin with. This issue does come up throughout our discussions on the committee, that many of the issues that we deal with when talking about compensation are because our administrators have to work under the guise of two separate governing bodies, and that adds a level of complexity that I think at some point we owe it to the community to decide if the financial savings are worth the inefficiencies that that brings organically. My second concern has to deal with going too far down the road of this project without the engagement of District 115. The majority of the work that we're doing does incorporate shared service positions, and obviously anything we come up with in terms of a philosophy or a concept or any recommendation is somewhat moot without their agreement. And I would like to see, either that's through the JSSC or going directly to District 115 leadership, I think we need to have someone from District 115 on this committee, either as an observer or as a committee member. The sooner we do that, the better off we are. And I think we need to use that as a gauge as to their willingness to participate, because I don't want to waste people's time coming up with what we believe is a great way of looking at a compensation and then have 115 say thanks but no thanks. Then it's a waste of everybody's time and energy. So that's another concern. Thirdly, I want to acknowledge that this is not easy work. To do it right, again, I want to do the right thing, but I also want to do it right. And I think personally to do it right requires a level of commitment, a level of digging into roles and understanding exactly what the work is and how many processes an individual might manage, and understanding again how that is done in other districts as well. So it's going to take an amount of time and amount of energy from our administrators and from the committee members that concerns me relative to, we all have day jobs from the committee member perspective, and for the administrators, they're already trying to service two districts, and to throw this on their plates can be a bit overwhelming. So we're going to push forward. We'll talk about the charter a little bit later. If you have any questions then, we can talk about it. But those are three things that I think as a board we need to think through, and as the JSSC, Mike and Rob and Suzanne, I would ask that you guys work with 115 to talk about, because I just would hate to see us put a lot of good time and energy into something that, frankly, unless we get their buy-in, isn't going to go anywhere. That's all for the Compensation Committee.
So a couple thoughts. First, thank you for the thorough update and sharing your concerns. Certainly, your second concern I jotted down, and we'll sort of take. I'll talk to Dave, and we can bring it up at JSSC meeting as well. Maybe I may involve you in talking with Dave and I. But I completely get your point, and I'll take that to some degree on my lap to see if I can help out with that. Your third point on time is not an easy answer, and I'm guessing you may have already thought about it, but I'm going to ask you the question, and you don't have to answer now. It may or may not make any sense. It's important work. It's big work. It's a lot of work. Should we potentially consider bringing in a consultant to do it? You don't have to answer. It's a possible answer for the third concern. Give it some thought, do with it what you want. It may or may not be any good, but I just throw that out there. So thank you, though. Other questions or comments for?
I would like to say that in terms of the administrative folks that are on the committee, so Mike and Jen and Rebecca, and who am I missing? The level of enthusiasm that they've come to this project with is exciting, and there's a real opportunity here for us to provide them with guidance and provide them with tools that they can utilize to maintain a positive culture in this building. And I think it's important work and it's good work. I just want to make sure doing the right things right, and not getting people excited about an opportunity that ends up for naught because both parties aren't at the table.
Other questions or comments? Thank you. We now move to liaison reports, starting with NSSED. Suzanne.
The NSSED Leadership Council has not met since our last meeting, but will be meeting on August 28th at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Suzanne. Legislative Liaison Alice. Alice is not here tonight. Spirit of 67 Foundation. Rich.
No Spirit of 67 board meeting was conducted since my last report, at least not one that I was invited to. The Spirit of 67, however, would like to inform all district parents that Spirit representatives will be present at Parent Information Night at the various schools. So please meet with your Spirit representatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Questions or comments for Rich? Good luck on your invites. Executive APT. Suzanne.
Like Rich, to my knowledge, the executive APT has not met, but I will follow up on that after this meeting and find out what's going on.
Great. Any other liaisons that I may have missed? We now come to our second public participation item. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Seeing none, we move on to action items. First action item tonight, may I have a motion to approve the administrator teacher salary and benefits report as presented?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? Mike or Jen or Rebecca, whoever's appropriate, just for the public, you want to give a 30-second update as to what it is that we're voting on?
And Jen can supplement this as she needs to. This is a perfunctory report that is required by the state of administrator and teacher salary and benefits that we do annually.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Roll call vote, please, Eileen.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up, may I have a motion to approve the second reading of Press Issue 100 and 5-year updates?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Questions or comments, discussion?
This is most of, almost not all of this is essentially updates to footnotes or changes to apply to legal changes, either in the school code or in the state. So there's no major. Oh,
4190 about target.
yeah, 4190. We talked about this last month, or back in June, I believe, with regard to this is a new program. We had some questions as to whether or not it was necessary due to the fact that I think much, if not all, of what's in here could be found in other policies. This was recommended after the Virginia Tech shootings. Some years ago, studies were done to suggest that we do provide this. It is done at the high school. And in talking with Mike and others, it does not provide any undue extra committees, reporting, and so forth. So we did recommend that it be approved.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the first reading of Press Issue 101 and 5-year updates?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion?
So this is similar. We actually, in going through the recommendations of press, and I think this is kudos to our board, quite frankly, we ended up keeping our policy in place of the recommended policies that came from press regarding a few things. Fund balances was one. There were a couple others that when we looked at the policy we have in place, we found it to be either more robust than what was being recommended or far more clear. There were also a couple of policies that frankly asked for a level of detail that just wasn't necessary. So most of what you're getting is merely, again, just legal footnotes and changes and so forth. We've kept out most of the major policies that we felt didn't add any more additional value to what we already had on the books.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please, Eileen.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the 401A plan as presented?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Comment or discussion? Mike or Jen, and maybe Jen is maybe more appropriate for this one, you want to give just a 30-second overview of what this is?
Sure. The superintendent's contract had a provision for contribution to a 401A plan. The district did not actually have a plan in place. It was actually, it didn't start the first year of this new contract, so we're putting it in place in advance of that.
And I think, and make sure my comment is correct, Jen, please, I believe that it's worth noting this has no cost to the district.
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Other than you're contributing.
Comments or discussion on this? Roll call vote, please, Eileen.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the Roth 457 plan as presented?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Comments or discussion? Jen, is it fair to say this is similar to the last item?
Exactly the same, adding another option for our employees at no cost to the district.
Perfect. Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 calendar as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Rebecca, do you want to give the public 15 seconds on what the change is? Thank you.
The 1920 calendar is, we're asking the board to vote on it being revised to add embedded emergency days. And off the top of my head, I believe those are President's Day, which is February 17th, and the Institute Day, April 23rd. Is that date correct?
Sounds right.
Okay.
Thank you. Perfect. Comments or discussion? Roll call vote,
Well,
please,
hang on,
Eileen.
I think it's important to note that we actually utilized these this year, and I thought it went extremely well. It was, I thought, a nice thing to have in place so that we aren't stuck with 5 extra days at the end of the school year. So I think this is a smart thing to continue to do for our calendars going forward.
The April date is actually the 13th.
Any other comments? I agree with what Jeff said. Eileen, roll call vote, please. And what Suzanne said.
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the final 2018-2019 calendar?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Given that this is history, we'll skip the explanation. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
May I have a motion to approve the compensation committee charter as presented?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion?
So in addressing my earlier concerns, we decided to move forward with the charter to ensure that, the committee is moving forward. We want to move forward. And so I just want to call specific note to the purpose to make sure that that meets the needs of people who have provided some input. So I'll just read it real quickly. But the purpose of the Compensation Committee is to develop a recommendation to the District 67 School Board and eventually the District 115 School Board regarding a compensation philosophy for shared service employees. Such a recommendation should take into account the following: that there is a win-win-win reality surrounding where taxpayers, district families and students, and shared service employees are positively affected financially, professionally, and educationally. That this philosophy is aligned with both the District 67 and 115 mission, vision, and milestones, particularly as it relates to Milestone 4, attracting and retaining talent. And that both District 67 and the 115 boards and administrators will have clarity with regards to board ownership of shared service positions that do not serve both boards equally. We will also be making sure that in the process of coming up with this philosophy that we are, like I said earlier, understanding the roles, potentially coming up with a multiplier for the roles, and trying to establish salary bands for roles so that it gives both boards guidance as we talk about compensation as to the bands in which these roles are compensated justifiably, and that for positions of shared service, when we do compare them with their peers in single district environments, that we have a way to appropriately acknowledge the added workload that comes with some, if not all, of these types of roles. Anyone else? Suzanne, do you have any?
No, I think that was a great summary.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Motion carried.
May I have a motion to approve the human resources items as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Mr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Eileen, before I move on to the consent agenda, I know in my packet of signatures, there's the intergovernmental agreement between 67 and 65 for food. Have we already voted? Fine.
Sorry.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the consent agenda then. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. I'll now read the items on the consent agenda. Approval of disbursement payrolls and financial statements dated June 2019, minutes of regular meeting and workshop June 25th, 2019, minutes of an executive session June 25th, 2019, disposal of audio recordings. Is there any board member who would like any item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the consent agenda? Roll call vote, please, Eileen.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye?
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Chun?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Since we last met, we've had 2 FOIA requests. First from Empower Illinois, status complete. The second from Jennifer Harpold, status complete. Announcements, Monday, August 26, 2019 is an Institute Day with no student attendance. The same is true for Tuesday, August 27th. Wednesday, August 28th is the first day of student attendance at District 67, a full day of school. Monday, September 2nd is no school as it's Labor Day. Wednesday, September 4th is the first day of kindergarten with a staggered start. Thursday, September 5th is the first day of kindergarten, also with a staggered start. Friday, September 6th, all kindergarten attendance, as well as everyone else. Tuesday, September 24th is our next board meeting right here in the West Campus Boardroom at 7 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn the Lake Forest School District 67 board meeting?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Meeting, no, meeting not adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.